Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm probably not able to see the faces, but I know you're listening.
Yes, everybody. Yeah, we're all here.
So yeah, as Dr. Allison said, my research is on zero waste, and I'm looking at zero waste programs on campuses, and I have used mixed methods in my research, and I'm bringing sociological and social sciences background in my research. I want to bring your attention towards waste crisis. I know everybody talks about climate change, and that's why I want to bring your focus to waste crisis, because the US alone generated 292.4 million tons of municipal solid waste in the year 2018, and that's just municipal solid waste. We're not even talking about other forms of waste. So I know climate change is like a big issue, but if you're able to divert our waste from the landfills, for example, our food waste or organics, we will actually be able to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from our landfills, which is a contributing factor to climate change. So waste management and reducing waste is one of the aspects of mitigating climate change. So I just put this picture here of, I don't know if you guys have watched the movie Wall-E. It's this little robot who is left on Earth to like deal with all the trash that humans have generated, and I don't think that is fair. We should be responsible for the actions that we have. So the conceptual framework that I use in my research, it is of the circular economy. So linear economy is basically you're taking the material, you are making a product, and then you're disposing it at the end. In a circular economy, you aim at reusing the products you have made for as long as possible and keeping the materials in a closed chain. So as my research is on zero waste is one of the zero waste uses the concept of circular economy, and it's one of the ways we can achieve circular economy. So more technical definition of what zero waste is. Again, 100% zero waste is not possible. I know people ask that question to me a lot. So the technical definition of zero waste is if a system is diverting 90% or more of the waste from landfills and incinerators, a system is called zero waste. And I want to emphasize on incinerators, because we usually think that we can send our waste to like these plants who create energy out of waste, but those plants are actually they create air pollution, and they're usually set up in areas where minority people live. So it creates this issue of environmental justice. So that's why we don't want to send our waste to landfills or incinerators. So this is a hierarchy that zero waste follows, and it's developed by the Zero Waste International Alliance. So starting with rethink, reduce, and reuse. So the top three are the factors where the zero waste actually, the policies that goes into zero waste actually focus. So the top three are more of the proactive approaches before the waste is being generated, and the bottom, starting from recycling till incinerators, these are more of the reactive approaches. So zero waste actually focuses on how we can reduce the waste even when it's before it's created. So for example, you can see a picture here. This is a mouse. It's made from wooden material. So that's where the rethinking and redesign comes in as to how we can make our materials more sustainable. And then we have bamboo straws. So coming up with policies and programs that we can change single-use plastic. And then at the last picture is about a college who runs food donation. So UF also has food donation pantry. I think that's a great resource. You can donate your food, you can get food from there. So it creates this circular system where we are reusing the material in a closed loop. And zero waste focuses on infrastructure, policies, and programs. So infrastructures, for example, providing enough recycling bins or even providing the opportunity to compost. And then policies comes in play where there is, for example, in California, they have mandatory composting and recycling. So those are the policies which the zero waste advocates focus on. And then programs, for example, enough training and education and for zero waste, and then food donation drives, for example, in the picture. So for my research, I'm focusing on higher education institutions. So why higher education institutions? So the problem that I have found in the literature and the studies that has been done, that most of the existing studies and the sustainability frameworks, they talk about sustainability, but waste is only a little part in their framework. They talk about energy, water, and there's so many things that goes into sustainability. So defining what zero waste is and understanding the factors that can help us achieve that 90% of diversion, it's important to understand that, and there's not enough understanding in the literature. So, for example, GRI is Global Reporting Initiative, and TRUE is also an organization which gives zero waste certification. But then again, that is just for businesses. Also, we talk about sustainable development goals. So the sustainable development goal number 12, it's sustainable consumption and production. They talk about meeting this target of reducing waste by 2030, but they don't really tell us how we can achieve it. And the second issue that I found was that there has been studies on zero waste. Zero waste is not a new concept. It's just people are getting to know about it right now, or they're academically exploring this topic now. And on March 30th, we actually celebrated our first International Zero Waste Day, which was recognized by the UN. So the studies that has been done already, the academic studies, they mostly focus on the cities, or if they focus on higher education, they talk about case studies. So they don't give us the quantifiable factors that we know for sure we will reach to more waste diversion. And that is where I want to bring my research in, because I want to quantify those factors and even understand what other factors can contribute to waste diversion. So again, why cities? Why are higher education institutions? Because they are, if you think about it, UF is huge. It's like a miniature city. They have the same departments. They operate in a similar fashion as a municipality would. So that's why it's important to focus about higher education institutions, because this will help them reduce their waste and help them to move towards sustainability. So how to reach 90% of waste diversion to be zero waste? That is what my question is. I want to identify what are some of the factors that could be most influential in improving the zero waste programs in higher education institutions of the US. So for that, I used mixed method, where I did regression analysis, survey, interview. So starting with the quantitative part, I collected my data for my quantitative study from the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System. So this is a internationally recognized organization to which the institutions in the US and also outside the US, they send their sustainability reports. And they sometimes do it annually, or they can do it in 3 years to get a rating from the institutions. They're given bronze, platinum, diamond, gold, based on what kind of sustainability efforts they have done. So I collected my data from there. So I basically screened, I had 1,800 institutions to work with nationally and international. So I screened them based on what country they are in, and then what reporting version they follow, because this organization, it has various reporting versions. For example, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, 1.1. So my focus was just on the reporting version 2.1, because that came before COVID. So I did not include data from 2020 because at that time, due to COVID, there were not enough people on campus. So that probably led to changes in the type of waste and the amount of waste that was being generated. And then I at the end, after screening, I had 274 institutions to work with, and I exported that in my Excel sheets, and whatever data was missing, I filled that manually. And my dependent and independent variables both are collected from this data. I had two other secondary data where my independent variables came from, and those were what is the political affiliation of the governor of the state and what is the state's rank in terms of waste management, because I wanted to understand what are some of the external factors that could affect the amount of waste or how they manage their waste on an institution. So my dependent variable was scores on waste diversion and minimization, and the scores varied from 0 to 8, so 8 being the highest. And I had 31 independent variables to work with because there was no theory that I was testing, or I don't know which of the factors could be important. So I wanted to include them in my model, but I wanted to explore them. So one of the ways we can explore them is using, let me, I don't think I've mentioned it here, but I have used it using binary logistic regression using stepwise regression model. So that is what I use for my quantitative analysis. And for my qualitative part, I had survey and semi-structured interviews. So I used convenience sampling, and basically the 274 institutions that I had, I emailed the zero waste experts or the people who manage waste in those institutions. I emailed them, and the emails that I found was from Google, just Google search, because there was no information about basically the organization didn't want me to give their emails, so I did the search myself. I was able to get 250 emails, but some of them were not working, but I still sent out the emails. And at the end, again, I screened these people based on what is their relevance. Are they the person who managed the waste, or do they have enough understanding about how waste is being managed at their institution, and what is their age? Because I didn't want to interview people under 18 in case they are the one who reported it or they are the one who manages it. So I had 32 people who responded to my survey out of the 250, and for the survey, the type of survey the technique that I used is called Delphi survey, and for this survey 32 is a good number to work with. So it's a 3-round survey, and it's a consensus building survey. So basically the idea is that you need to get the experts together to understand, according to them, what are some of the opportunities and barriers, and what are the important factors that we want to focus on. So in the round 1, I asked them to list the barriers and opportunities that they face when implementing zero waste programs. And in the second round, they needed to rate those statements from 0 to 10. And in the third round, they basically did the same thing. But in this round, I provided them with averages from the round 2. So they could see how their peers have rated these statements in round 2, and if they want to change their answers, they could do that. And that's where the consensus building part comes in. And after the round 3 was completed, I knew what my important barriers and opportunities are, but I didn't have enough understanding on how these operate in a higher education institution. So I invited my 32 people who took the survey, I invited them to my semi-structured interview. So 10 of the people, they responded and agreed to my survey, my interview. And the way I coded this survey was, the semi-structured interviews were through selective coding and thematic text analysis process. So I didn't have a theory to work with. I wasn't testing anything. I was exploring what is out there, but I did use the approach of systems theory. So basically, the systems theory approach says that to understand an entire system, it is important that we understand them in small bits, but then we also need to bring all that information together so that we have a better clarity of understanding the entire picture. So the way the systems approach talk about these understanding these factors is dividing them into micro, meso, and macro levels. So in my study, uh, micro level is any activity that is occurring inside a single institution. For example, implementing a zero waste goal or hiring employees. Institution has a direct control over those factors. For the meso-level factors, again, institution has the direct control, but these activities occur in collaboration. For example, two institutions working together, or institution and any local entity. For example, thrift stores. Institution can collaborate with thrift stores to donate their excess surplus material. And for the macro level, these are the activities that institution cannot control, and this is outside of an institutional control. For example, if a city has a mandatory recycling policy, or if a state has a mandatory recycling policy, institution necessarily cannot control it, but those policies do play a role in how institutions' waste management will operate, because they then have to follow those policies. So this is the exploratory statistical analysis that I was talking about. It's called backward stepwise elimination linear regression. So my 31 variables was reduced to 10, and I was able to understand what are some of the most significant factors that have more influence on my waste minimization and diversion score. So just to summarize this real quickly, so the way we interpret this table is based on the significance level, which comes under the probability row, and then we have coefficients. So if the coefficient is higher, it means that variable is strongly related with our dependent variable. So here we can see, for example, state sustainability member, the coefficient is 0.75, that's the highest. So it means that if institution is a member of a state sustainability network, that those institutions have higher scores in the waste diversion and minimization, and the score increases by 0.57. There is no unit, it increases by 0.57 on that scale from 0 to 8. And basically all the other variables were interpreted similarly. So I've color coded them. The institutions in yellow, the factors in yellow, they are the micro level factors, and then we have meso level and macro level. So these were the factors that came out to be very important, and one of them is procurement policy, which was the most important because that was also seen in my surveys and interviews. So again, I'm at the end of my round 3 of my survey. I had 11 barriers and 7 opportunities. So the top 5 barriers and the top 5 opportunities, I chose them for my semi-structured interviews. So I have color coded this. The green one are the opportunities, and the red on the bottom are the barriers. And then they're also color coded based on which are the micro, meso, and macro level factors. So all the variables except the collaboration with local organization, rest of them are micro level factors. I didn't find any macro level factors based on the expert interviews. They didn't talk about any of the city level factors. So this is just what came out from the my interviews. Again, just talking about the top 3 that I thought was consistent in my interviews as well as in my quantitative analysis. It was procurement, having a zero-waste policy, and education and outreach. So this is some of the things that people talk. For example, under procurement, they thought it was a great opportunity because procurement right now is very limited, and again, it's very decentralized. Departments are free to purchase whatever they want. There is no check, there is no mandatory or binding policy as to what they can buy and from where they can buy. So it's a great opportunity where the institutions can have a binding and a centralized procurement policy. For example, a one-stop policy, as one of my interviewees said, where every departmental purchase needs to go through that one-stop system so that we know what is coming in and going out of our institution. In terms of education and outreach, almost every interviewee mentioned that it's very important, and the way some of the institutions do it, that during the orientations, for example, how we have orientations every semester, they introduce the sustainability aspect or waste management aspect during those orientations, so that people understand what are the policies that, or what are the goals that institutions follow, because institutions are very diverse. We have international students who come to our institutions every year. They don't know anything about the policy that US might be following, or maybe UF might be following. So it's important that we continue the education, but not once. It should be in a continual process done every semester or regularly. And one of my interviewees said that they were not able to quantify, but they did see that for every hour of education outreach they did, they were able to see that the contamination dropped. So contamination in the sense that if we have two bins, if one is trash and then one is recycling, they said that if we are educating people, we could see that people were putting the right things in the right bin. Like the trash went to the trash bin, recycling went to the recycling. But when they don't do it, it's called contamination. Your materials get contaminated, your recyclables get contaminated. So basically you cannot recycle it. And in terms of having zero waste policy, that is also one of the things that interviewees said is a great opportunity to implement, because when we have a written zero waste policy, or when an institution has a written zero waste policy and a goal, it holds the university accountable, it holds the stakeholder accountable, and we can ask them like, hey, you said we're gonna be zero waste by 2040. What are the steps that you're taking? So that's where the accountability part kind of comes in. So these are the top three, which are summarized here, but I kind of already talked about them. So I'm gonna quickly go over it. So what are the implications of my research? So my findings will help improve the existing sustainability frameworks, including the sustainability tracking assessment framework that I extracted my data from. It could help them make more robust sustainability frameworks, especially under the waste section. They could add more categories. For example, they can ask questions if they have mandatory sustainability policy. So such kind of factors will help us understand more about how to quantify them. So more studies can be done in that sector. It can also be used by other higher education institutions in the US who aspire to become zero waste. And it can also be useful for policymaker as a guideline, not necessarily that they have to include all the factors, but they can have a guideline. Okay, this has worked. Can that work in the setting that they are studying? So it helps them provide a blueprint to start something with. And then it also has the possibility of being implemented in a city. For example, one of the variable was if the institution has a full-time employee. And even in my survey and interview, people said that they do need a full-time employee in their in the higher education institution, because the sustainability department is very understaffed, so it will be good to have a person who deals everything with waste. And similarly, a city can also have a zero waste specialist. For example, like Gainesville recently hired a zero waste specialist, and because institutions and cities are very similar in the way they operate their waste or manage their waste, so some of these factors have possibility of being replicated or implemented in a city. And then future studies can focus on quantifying different meso and macro factors, because what I found was in my study, there were majority of the micro level factors, especially in the survey, lots of them were micro level factors, and meso level and macro level factors are very few. So there needs to be more quantification of these factors. That is it. I just shared a QR code for my LinkedIn and my references are attached here. So that is the end of my presentation. Now, if there are any questions, I would love to take it.
Thank you. Yes, let's open this up to questions. I can take a look on Zoom, but does anybody in the room have any questions?
Hi, Ashpreet. Great presentation. Thanks for telling us about your project. I know, I mean, the zero waste is, it's such a big goal. I think it's pretty intimidating, right, for most institutions or communities to take on. And so perhaps this question is a little silly, but like, how were you left after doing this whole project? How are you feeling about our progress, ours and, the communities and institutions you surveyed, the actual progress being made towards some of these goals?
I think some of the institutions are doing very great, especially the institutions in the West, for example, in California, because their state has made it like, how would I say, like a responsibility, that it's the state's responsibility. So the institutions are actually following the rules of mandatory recycling. So I would say there are some institutions which are doing really great, but then there are some other institutions whose focus is not on waste management or reducing waste. So again, I wonder if those institutions are in states where waste management is not a priority. So I think there needs to be a push, not just from inside the institution, but also community outside, or even the state, from students inside the institution. And there's a need to create this sustainable culture in the institution so that students understand how our environment has been facing problems. So yeah, I think there's still a great way to go.
Thanks. I figured it makes sense.
And there's a question from Tina in the chat for you.
Okay, how does the free market play a role into this? For example, UF has preferred purchasing with Amazon. So if a product is offered by Amazon, we must purchase from them. However, Amazon seldom offers products that are sustainable and also has issues with extra packaging, which becomes waste. How do we avoid more policies being placed on P card holders when there are already so many requirements and policies with no support staff to assist? Also, would such a policy need to be adopted by the Board of Trustees or the university president? I think that's a great question. And then again, it comes with the idea of what is the priority of the institution. Again, buy-in from administration is really important. As you said, like, the support from the president, if the president is supporting our efforts, then similar policies will be made. For example, the student organizations at UF, they are required to cater from certain vendors. They cannot cater from, for example, the Indian organizations. I know we cannot cater from vendors inside Gainesville. We are required to cater from someone who is outside, and probably they have signed this contract with UF. But I think that's the institution's responsibility to give that freedom to their to their employees, to their students, so they can purchase locally. Like as we say, we need to go local, but we can only do that when we have such policies. And I think there might be some other issues playing role there, which I haven't explored in my institutions, but we probably need to understand why they are signing these contracts with these other vendors when we can purchase locally. So I think that will be really interesting, another like research topic. But I do understand your point, and I would say it's the institution's responsibility, and again, support from the staff and administration to help create such an environment for the institution. I hope that answered.
All right, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. That was a really interesting project. I'm really glad that you came in to talk to us about that today. This is our last seminar, actually, crazily enough. So if anybody has any questions for me as we're wrapping up the semester, please get in touch. Otherwise, have a wonderful summer. It's gonna be amazing. All right, thank you.